Morning to all of you present here. And the topic of the day is green energy. Now, the green energy is actually the talk of the town, the talk of between the states, and the talk at the national level, and the talk at the international level and in international forums. Now, when we take up this matter, what exactly was the reason of studying the very concept of green energy and why the international community made an attempt to resolve this issue at the earliest? Now, what has happened was after the formation of the United Nations, a lot of things and developmental activities were taking place throughout the world. Because under the Charter of the United Nations, under Article 1, paragraph 2, one of the objectives of the Charter of the United Nations is to promote international cooperation. International cooperation not only in the field of education, but even in the industrial field. Now, this development has led to the industrialization of the advanced countries of the world. Naturally, for every activity, there will be a repercussion. And this repercussion is nothing but the release of noxious fumes and the generation of hazardous waste, the generation of chemical waste, the generation of battery waste. The international community in the beginning was not in a position to find a suitable answer because the technology was not that advanced. But then what has happened was it had a very telling effect on the forest reserve as well. Especially the Amazon forests, which are called as the lungs of the world, had its, telling effect on the international community. Simultaneously, the state of United States wanted to have an international organization to regulate the forests. But all these things, remained only a dream. Now, in the 1972, 1973, there was a body which was constituted to look into the environment of the world. And this body, which was established for purpose of looking the status of the environment in the world, the International Commission on Environment and Development, that is the name. Naturally, first in its meeting, they decided that we should take the opinion of states. And we should write all states saying that what exactly was the forest cover and what is the forest cover now. What was the what we call as the rivers, lakes, and wetlands in the country, and what is the status of wetlands in your country now? What exactly was the strength of birds and other mammals in your country, and what is the present position now? So it was just like a questionnaire which was sent to all states, and all the states were asked to reply to this. Now, they gave enough time also. Perhaps they must have given more than 6 months to reply to each of the states. Then what has happened was the reply they got and they started looking at it. When they looked at it, it was nothing but a threatening message to almost all states. The forest cover in a few states has depleted to the maximum. And the resources was coming to the rock bottom. And the species have disappeared. For example, I can just tell you, in the statistics that is being given, they went to the extent of pointing out in India, there were as many as 8.7 million species. It is in the world, 8 million species which are found in the world, which included the rarest of the rare species. But then the state of India had owned 8.2% of the 8.7 million. Now, that is for a country, it is huge. But still, it was good statistics. That was what was pointed by the United Nations Commission on Environment and Development. But then the maintenance, the care that was given was too meager. And they went to the extent of pointing out some other countries as well, wherein the rarest of the rarest species have disappeared. And remember, it is just not possible to bring in and to show to the public or to the rest of the world what is it and how it's it, from when did it live, how it took its birth. All of them are only in the textbooks that are available today. So in such a situation, the international community wanted to call an international conference on the world human environment. See, the international conference on the world human environment. And this human conference on world environment was convened from June 1st to June 15th. And this was convened in the year 1972. And in the year 1972, when it was convened, there were as many as 112 states which participated. And these 112 states not only participated, but they deliberated on many matters. And having deliberated on many matters, remember, they were able to adopt what we call as a formula. And this formula was written down and it included 26 principles. So the United Nations Conference on Human Environment 1972 contained 26 principles. Now, what are these 26 principles? Now, the second principle, which indicated that the resources must be used. Remember, scanty resources must be used very carefully. Although the concept of sustainable development had not come then, the concept of sustainable development was part of the United Nations Conference on Human Environment. They said if the resources are used to the maximum, then what will happen? It will not remain. And it had to be used, and it should be planned utilization of the resources. That is what the conference said. Then always they went to the extent of pointing out in Principle 20, you have scientific methods of research had to be used for preservation of the environment. Now, till then, there was no scientific methods of prevention, and science was advancing on day-to-day basis. When science was advancing on day-to-day basis, it had to be protected, it had to be preserved, and it had to be kept. That was another article which is being given. Then thereafter, Principle 7 went to the extent of pointing out, now states should come united and have to discuss their problems and should be in a position to identify the resolutions between them in protecting the environment. So it is not only related to a species, it is related to forest, it is related to the marine environment, it is related to the pollution of the seas. Nothing was left. All of them were deliberated at length, and then the 26 principles spoke of. Then there is one important principle which is called as the Principle 21. What is this Principle 21? Principle 21 of the Stockholm Declaration happened to be a principle which is called as no harm rule today. In English terminology, which is called as no harm rule today. Now you may ask me, what is this no harm rule? The point is, say states always to speak about and boast of their sovereignty and sovereign rights. States have sovereign rights and sovereignty. But then these sovereign rights and sovereignty cannot be extended to damage the environment of another state. Come what may. A state, although is sovereign, although is supreme, it cannot harm the environment of another state, was the message under 21. Now, it simply said, because in the notes, if you see, it points out, a state, while remaining in an ecosystem, is not supposed to danger and damage and cause some kind of environmental damage to the ecosystem of another state. Now, what does it mean? For example, the Stockholm Declaration essentially is based on the trial smelter arbitration case. Now, most of you who are teaching at least international law will have studied the trial smelter arbitration case. In the trial smelter arbitration case, remember, there was a factory which was established by the state of Canada, bordering the state of United States. And this factory, remember, used to release lead, zinc, and sulfur dioxide. The lead, zinc, and sulfur dioxide released by this factory bordering the state of United States slowly and steadily enter into the Columbian River Valley. Having entered into the Columbian River Valley, it used to enter the state of Washington. Having entered the state of Washington, it damaged standing crops, it damaged timber, it damaged vegetation, and it damaged the species, marine species even. So the state of United States were not aware of this at all. Now, the state of United States later comes to know, then said, what is happening? We are living in a peacetime and we live in a peacetime. Why the state of Canada is doing this? And when we are good, friendly relationships we have a collective security pact between us. Why the state of Canada doing this was the question which was posed to the ministerial committees or the Committee of the United States as well as the state of Canada. There the state of Canada apologized and said, we will not do it, we will stop it once for all. But then, although the incident has taken place in 1929, it went on, remember, releasing it until 1936. This time, the state of the United States said it is a serious matter. For having done it, these things and tried to harm the environment of the state of the United States, you have to, remember, pay compensation. And the state of Canada had to pay compensation by an arbitration tribunal. So this principle happened to be the origin of what we call as the sic utre ad elenum ladis, that is in Latin terminology. The same is translated into no harm rule. So this is the essence of what we call the Stockholm Conference. Many things can be spoken, but that is not relevant for purpose of green energy. Then we come to the other developments naturally which has taken place under the after the Stockholm Conference is the establishment of the United Nations Environment Program. In the same conference, they said the existing machinery and existing rules are not enough. And in order to, remember, regulate the environment, in order to protect the biodiversity, in order to protect the marine resources, and in order to protect the seawater and rising the sea level, we should have what we call as an organization which should be called as United Nations Environment Program. So the United Nations Environment Program was established in the year 1973, the very next year of the establishment of the first conference on human environment. Now today, most of the treaties related to environment are negotiated or at the behest of the United Nations Environment Program. And its headquarters are in Nairobi in Kenya. And all activities, remember, any matter, for example, if you just you go to the library, you will come to know it is UNEP. That means it has a role in protecting and preserving the environment, and you have what we call as a council, you have a secretariat, the office, and it is the council and the secretariat, they actually carry out their work. Now, after 1973, when we go further, deeper into the matter, we come to another issue relating to green energy. Now, the other issue happened to be the World Charter for Nature. The World Charter for Nature was adopted somewhere on October 28, 1982. The World Charter for Nature pointed out nature is important to all. And nature is the mother of everyone. But then what is found in the nature, both living and non-living, are today in danger. And for this purpose, we have to do something. And it is the duty of all states led by the United Nations to protect the marine environment was the expression that was pointed out by it. Now, it was attended by 112 states and 111 participated very actively, but then one state, that is the state of the United States, did not, remember, sign the what we call is the World Charter for Nature. Now, if the World Charter for Nature has has discussed matters pertaining to what is called the rise in the sea level, and they consulted the experts. The scientists have studied this matter. Having studied this matter, they pointed out the rise in the sea level takes place because of the disappearance of the biodiversity and as well as the disappearance what we call as wetlands. See, disappearance of the biodiversity and disappearance of wetlands. And wetlands are very much essential. A a few years earlier, that was in 1970, a convention was adopted. And this convention was signed in Iran on February 2nd, 1970, and which came into force in the month of October in 1975. Now, what is this Convention on Wetlands? The Convention on Wetlands simply points out each state becoming a party to the convention should have a wetland. Now, you may ask me, what is a wetland? A wetland is an area which covers rivers, lakes, ponds, and estuaries. So, an area in a state which covers lakes, rivers, and estuaries and ponds generally is come under what we call as the Convention on Wetlands. How this should be regulated? Every state should have at least one wetland in its country. And because the wetlands, if they have, it naturally increases or keeps the level of groundwater on a higher side. And because of the disappearance of wetlands, naturally the depletion of groundwater is a symptom which is known and which is present even in Bangalore. Now, for example, take it this way, N.K. Patil, a judge of the High Court, former judge of the High Court of Karnataka, had written a book on lakes in Bangalore. And if you read the book, he points out there are as many as 78 lakes in Bangalore. And all the lakes, for example, the lakes, most of them were present in the Electronic City and in other areas. Where are they? And here constructions have come. And during the rain, what is happening is it is not in a position to limit the flow of water. And some of the buildings are being targeted because all of them were wetlands in Bangalore. And there is no water, much less groundwater. You know, all these developments which are taking place has taken place last year and year before last. Now, conservation of wetlands is very much essential to produce green energy. And once it is done, and if lakes and rivers, if they are protected, estuaries, if they are protected, naturally there will be conservation of water underground. And when these waters are there, greenery comes up. And greenery is but natural. And it has to be protected and it has to be preserved. Now, I will just, instead of going much on this convention, I just tell you, today in 1988, a survey was conducted. In the survey that was conducted, the world community came to know there are as many as 400 wetlands in the world. And 400 wetlands in the world. And afterwards, in the recent survey, it is pointed out there are 2 lakes in the state of Switzerland. And these 2 lakes in the state of Switzerland extend to an area of 20 square kilometers each. See, it is what we call as a lake. A lake extending to 20 square meters, miles or kilometers, covering as many as this area, which I just pointed out, both of them. But then the largest number of lakes we find in the state of Canada. In the state of Canada, we have as many as 28 lakes. And these 28 lakes in the state of Canada cover as many as 130,000 kilometers. Lakes covering 130,000 kilometers. That is why Canada's greenery is rich. Green environment is rich even today. And I know Canada personally. See, the water which is given in the pumped is the drinking water. It is not, natural water comes and it is being used even without getting heated. You did not, remember, put it on the stove and afterwards you drink. No. That is why the green environment is pure, simple, and green. Hygienic, most important. Now, 130,000 square kilometers of wetland is found in the state of Canada. Now, the total length of wetlands in today is 285,000 kilometers. 285,000 means 285,000 kilometers, square kilometers are wetlands in the country. Now, what the convention is saying is everyone should protect. Unless if you keep the rivers and the lakes and the ponds and estuaries for purpose of preservation for the international community, and inherent danger is to everyone. Everyone will face the danger. Now, thereafter, we go to the other important developments which have taken place. In the year 1985, the great lady submitted the Brundtland report. She was the Prime Minister of Norway. She became then the officer at the United Nations. And she was appointed as one of the officers to submit a report on the status of environment. And when he was asked to submit a report of environment in 1986, she submitted the first report. When she submitted the first report, in the first report, she pointed out that the fundamental thing which is required today is the concept of sustainable development. And at a later stage, the concept of intergenerational equity was added to it. The concept of sustainable development is very simple, which I just said a few minutes ago. Resources must be used only to the extent that is required. And the remaining has to be safeguarded for the generations which come after us. The generations which come after us also should be in a position to make use of it. That is why today the concept of sustainable development has, trespassed into almost all areas of life. It is not only related to environment, even the university says sustainable development. And sustainable development number 4, and that is being used and utilized and abused by all of them. But then for the first time, this lady is the one, Brundtland, in Principle 10, she introduced it, and they said it has to be practiced. Later, by a General Assembly resolution, it became a part of the existing rules of international law and law of the environment. Then what has happened was, in 1987, the members of the international community adopted a convention. And this convention happened to be the Vienna Convention of the ozone layer. And the Vienna Convention of the ozone layer was adopted because at that time, a lot of problems were there. And this problem, because of the heat, is going to create ultraviolet radioactive waves. And this ultraviolet radioactive circle, if it is allowed to be done, or allowed to be done, the heat will be more and it will be poisonous and deadly, and the people will not live, and it will cause damage to the environment. In order to prevent this, they went to the extent of pointing out all items which are produced, electric items, including refrigerators and including air conditioners, must be CFC free, chlorofluorocarbon free. And this technology has to be used by almost all countries of the world. CFC, naturally, it is being produced. CFC-free refrigerators or air conditioners are produced in the United States or UK or somewhere. But then this technology has to be given by these rich states to all the developing countries. That was the message, to see that environment and habitats are saved and they should be in a position to live freely in an environment which is sound to them. That is what has happened. Now then, another was a resolution or a convention. It's a convention, was adopted in the year 1987 only. And this 1987 convention happened to be a convention relating to what we call as early notification in the event of an accident. Now you may ask me, what is this early notification? Convention on early notification in the event of an accident. Now the point is, this convention was adopted by the International Atomic Energy Agency, an United Nations organization. Now what has happened was, you might be knowing, the revolution in the communist Russia, that is Glasnost and Perestroika. Gorbachev was the president of the state of Russia. And during his time, Russia was split into several states. All the earlier states which are part of the state of Soviet Russia, they de-linked and came out of the state of Union of the state of Soviet Russia and became independent states. When they became independent states, what has happened was, Earlier, Soviet Russia, together with all its members, used to produce certain arms and weapons. Now, certain weapons, especially nuclear affected weapons, especially missiles and all, produced in Georgia. And in Georgia, soon after its dismemberment, unification, dismemberment, there was nobody to give service to these weapons. And it remained there for almost 10, 15, or whatever years. Now, with the result, remember, it started giving effect to radiation effect. When it started giving radiation effect, remember, it naturally not limited to the state of Georgia, but it went to the European continent. And the Scandinavian countries were the first to be affected by it. Now, when I speak about the Scandinavian countries, especially Norway, Denmark, and all of them got affected. The state of Norway started objecting to it. What is this? You are keeping the weapon without giving a service to it. But then it is affecting us. And the radiation from your country is coming to us. Immediately, the International Atomic Energy Agency took the issue, seized the issue, and then they said, in the event of any such damages, information must be given to the concerned states where they are likely to be affected. If this is not done, it cannot be accepted, was the fundamental point that points out this. Now, this is for what purpose this is done? This is mainly done because of keeping the concerned state green. Everything will disappear. Everything will melt. That should not happen was the idea of this. They'll get it. After 1987, we come to the year 1991. It was in the year 1991, you might be knowing, the Rio Declaration was adopted. The Rio Declaration was adopted because, remember, the international community was actually celebrating the 20 years of the Stockholm Declaration. When they were celebrating the 20 years of Stockholm Declaration, it was an international conference. More than 78 states have participated in this. The number of states who are members of the United Nations has increased. And many NGOs also participated. Thousands of NGOs participated in the meeting. And this, what we call as the Rio Conference, after deliberation, contributed much to the development of future environmental law. Because there were NGOs as well. There were experts as well. There were scientists as well. All of them, they contributed much to the progress and development of future international law. With the result, in 1991 conference, remember, they were able to adopt what we call as two important conventions. Now, the first convention, which was adopted in 1992, happened to be the Biological Diversity Convention. Now, what is this Biological Diversity Convention? The Biological Diversity Convention is to protect the natural biodiversity of a particular state. And you have a lot of forests. If you go to West Bengal, you have forests there, wonderful forests by the side of the lakes, rivers, and etc. And if you go to Karwar, you have, remember, green forests. And how these to be protected and what efforts are to be made. Now, at that time, a study was actually submitted to the United Nations. The study pointed out the resources, especially the forest cover, and the resulting effect is the rise in the sea level is taking place because of the damage to the biodiversity and the conservation of resources. So, biological diversity has to be protected by every state, come what may. And if this is not done, remember, there is an inherent danger. I just intend to bring home one or two important developments that have taken place. A recent study that is being conducted points out the rise in the sea level is too much. The rise in the sea level is too much, which is because of the loss of biological diversity in all states, irrespective of any. We need not say anything. I will speak about India a little later. Now, what has happened is because of the loss of biodiversity, rise in the sea level will take place. Because of the pollution of the seas, because all the hazardous waste earlier was released into the sea. And there was nobody to regulate, nobody to control. See, the open sea is the property of everyone. It was Arvind Pardo, a person from Malta, who said, the open sea belongs to all of us. Open sea is the common heritage of mankind. So the open sea is being used even to put the shit and everything, carbon, nitrogen, whatever wastes are there, you just put it in the open sea and there is a rise in the sea level. And it is taking place because of the loss of biodiversity and it has to be protected. And because of the rise in the sea level, the study indicates that the international community is losing 15.2 million hectares of land every year. Million hectares of land every year. That is why you must have seen in the newspapers rise in the sea level in Udupi, rise in the sea level in Karwar, rise in the sea level in Kundapur. Now, every year it is taking place. 15.2 million square kilometers are lost to what we call as the Mother Earth. Mother Earth is everything we say, but then we are losing it into sea. That is why they say seawater also has to be included in that. It has to be protected. Environment must be clean. So they adopted the Convention on Biological Diversity. I will just speak about the objectives of the convention. Now, the objectives of the convention generally are three. The one important one is, remember, conservation of biodiversity. The convention has come into force for the conservation of biological diversity. Then the sustainable use of its natural resources. It is not enough. Just because you have biodiversity, remember what has happened to the Amazon forest today. And when we speak of forest, remember, well, the Amazon forest or some other forest is actually producing 5,000 products, including food, medicine, and wood, medicine, and shelter. And this is being destroyed by us only, everywhere. Now, where are the forests? Earlier, when you travel to Karwar or Hubballi, you used to find so much of forest. Where is it now? Now you find five-star hotels in between. Now, conservation is very much essential, and that is one of the objectives. Sustainable use of the natural resources, that is the second one. Then equitable sharing. There cannot be any discrimination. That is the third one that is being spoken under the Biological Diversity Convention. Now, thereafter, remember, they adopted what we call as the Climate Change Convention. The Climate Change Convention, because the temperatures were rising and the green environment was almost disappearing. In such a situation, it has to be saved. Steps have to be taken. All measures have to be taken very seriously. And you cannot just bluff before the United Nations saying that, no, we are after industrialization. Industrialization, the toxic effect which is being given. Or, for example, you just go through and study something relating to transnational companies. Now, these transnational companies or multinationals, when they go, the first thing is they will cause environmental damage. Then market manipulation. The third one is consumer exploitation. Multinationals are beyond for these things: market manipulation, consumer exploitation, and environment pollution. And this is the tragedy. That is why they discussed threadbare, and all of them are to be resolved, and threadbare has to be stopped. Then this was going on. The United Nations Committee on Environment was meeting at every meeting, and there are certain tasks which are given to the states. And the tasks were very simple. They were saying, first and foremost, they were not interested in renewable energy. The concept of renewable energy came into operation only after the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. So the Kyoto Protocol, for the first time, remember, if you look to the Kyoto Protocol, it speaks about clean energy. It speaks about development of clean environment. Then it speaks about carbon tax. All of them started one by one coming up at the what we call as the United Nations Conference. And then the Kyoto Protocol, not only which was adopted after the Biodiversity Convention, discussed these matters. Having discussed these matters, remember, they tried to impose what we call as restrictions. They said if carbon related, uh, what we call as, it is called as the fossil fuel, any manufacture of an item, especially steel and medicine, if it is made by using what we call as the fossil fuel energy, they should be put a tax. And any importing country will put a tax on it and will discourage for such products to be bought and purchased in our country. So the importing country will say we'll put a tax. It is allowed, subject to this. So therein, the concerned country which produces what we call as metals or steel or iron ore products and then medicines, naturally it has to reduce what we call as the use of fossil fuel energy. That is where Kyoto Protocol, remember, for the development of environmental law in this country, Kyoto Protocol is the basic document. Now, after the basic document, remember the Kyoto Protocol adopted two more protocols. Now, another protocol happened to be the Cartagena Protocol of 2000. Cartagena Protocol of 2000 happened to be another major step in, remember, the development of what we call as clean environment and green energy. After the Cartagena Protocol in 2010, they adopted what we call as the Nagoya Protocol. Nagoya Protocol to the 1977 Kyoto Protocol. Nagoya Protocol, remember, although it was adopted in 2010, because of the hostile attitude of states, it was actually brought into force in the year 2014. Now, it was brought into force in the year 2014. Now, my fundamental point is what these protocols point out. These protocols point out, especially after 2000, that always a particular state should be in a position to use or contribute or to develop renewable energy. Renewable energy actually replacing the energy that is being used or produced by fossil fuel. Now, I just intend to speak to you something about the state of India. Now, you take the state of India, when you take the state of India, in India, 90% of the crude and oil is imported. It may be imported from what we call as the Gulf countries or the GCC countries or from the state of Soviet Russia. Or during the time of COVID, we imported oil even from the Latin America. Now, this is a crude oil because the crude oil naturally is black. And the crude oil, which is black, in order to make it yellow, a lot of efforts is required, purification is required. And you should have establishment for this purpose for cleaning, removing what we call as the poisonous content as well as other things. But then, see, there was 90% of the oil is imported by the state of India. And when 90% of the oil is imported by the state of India, remember, $1,284 billion we spend on oil every year. And remember how an exchequer of a particular state can survive if we import this much of oil by paying them through your nose. It is not 100 or $200 billion plus thousand. $1,284 billion. And it is not 1 year, it is every year, and it is a continuing process. And in the name of industrialization, you are permitting all car companies, manufacturers to produce cars. And the strength of the middle class is on the rise. And the strength of the middle class is on the rise. Naturally, they will go by purchase car and go try to go it. Even if the price becomes 100 rupees per liter, they buy. 103 becomes, they will buy. Now, in such a situation, what will happen to the environment? Because all crude oil which is being imported, naturally, remember, will have poisonous effect. I don't know whether you have read or not. There was a beautiful case which was decided by the Supreme Court of India. And the name of the case is Jagannath versus Union of India. In Jagannath versus Union of India, the Supreme Court pointed out, stop using crude oil and make use of unleaded petrol. It has a lead content. And the lead content is dangerous to health. And it is, remember, dangerous to the breathing system itself, heart. That is why, for the first time, the Supreme Court, somewhere in 1990, pointed to unleaded petrol should be used, and petrol with leaded petrol should not be used, come what may. That is where Supreme Court has, it's not only an administrator in environmental matters. The Supreme Court is not only an administrator, but it may a policy maker in matters pertaining to environment. For the first time, such a judgment came. Now, that is to save people in this country. Now, because of this, because of what we call as the present generation, 10 million people are losing in this country. We lose. Because on health, environmental related health matters. And in a few cases in the hospitals, the answers are yet to be found. But the answer is, remember, by consuming or drinking polluted water. Now, exposure to polluted air. All of them are the causes that is being given. Statistics, if you say it is, remember, whole lecture is not enough to give the statistics. Now, the second thing is, important thing is the use of coal. 80% of the coal in this country, the use of coal is, remember, imported. 80% of our coal is imported. We import from Australia and many other countries. Now, 80% of the coal, when it is used for purpose of running the railways and for other industries, and especially in industries which produce iron and steel, wherein only coal is being used, what will happen to the environment? I am just not going to speak about the statistics. The scientists have given the statistics. It releases this much of carbon. It releases this much of percentage of carbon monoxide. Releases carbon dioxide, CO2. All of them are being spoken, and it is threatening. And therein, the government of every country, which is a member of the United Nations, has to take action. And if you don't take action, remember, you may produce a product through what we call as the non-fossil fuels, and you are liable to pay a tax on this, was the expression. Now, in spite of the conference that was taking place, the conference of parties to have a climate change convention, another convention was going on in the international community. Now, you might be knowing the 28th conference has taken place in Dubai recently, Abu Dhabi, and it had taken place in the month of November and December, and they wanted to make huge commitments. Now, in order to prevent the release of carbon dioxide into the environment, in order to prevent the use of fossil fuel, the government of India has taken several steps. Now, you may ask me, which are these steps? The first thing is it had made a commitment. You see, the conference of parties on climate change used to meet every year and discuss. And in the year 2015, they were able to draft a convention on climate change. And this climate change convention, after a thorough discussion, had come into effect. And it was signed in 2015, and India ratified in the year 2016. Under the climate change convention, every state is supposed to, remember, slowly and steadily give up the use of fossil fuel. And the greatest danger is the use of fossil fuel. And it has to be replaced by renewable energy. The government of India, led by the Ministry of Environment, had made a commitment at the conference of parties. And this commitment is very, very simple. It went, we are going to spend as much as $900 billion. $900 billion from 2015. It became a party in 2016, from 2016 to 2030. And this $900 billion, first and foremost, it is going to be used in the power sector. The point is, now energy, power is most important. It has to be produced. And power has to be produced, remember, 40% of the power, additional power, you forget the present, 40% of the present use of power until 930 we will be producing through what we call as solar system. That is why you have an agreement on solar Indian. And the government of India has enacted a law on energy in the year 2000 itself. Go to, you will find out. Now, energy law. So they said 40% of the power we will be generating through the solar system. And remember, another development is they said we will be producing wind energy. And this wind energy we will go up certain percent. And then we actually use of bioenergy. Through the bioenergy, at least 10% of the energy will be produced in the future by us. Then it went to the extent of pointing out 5% of the required energy will be produced, remember, through hydroelectric projects. So hydroelectric projects produce power. For example, if you go to Udupi, now on the way to Kollur, you have a hydroelectric project which is established by Adani. And it is today a big hydroelectric project. Big hydroelectric projects which you find in Karnataka itself. So first one is they said they went to the statistics was given in the last paragraph. 100 megawatts of power through solar. Then 60 megawatts of power through wind energy. 10 megawatts of power through biotechnology. Then 5% related to the hydroelectric projects. That is the strength which are going to make. That will be, remember, to a certain extent will be self-sufficient. And all of them are carbon-free. All of them, all the four of them, which issues which I have said, are carbon-free, and it is not going to release any carbon dioxide. That is the point that is harped upon. Now, recently in the climate change conference, what has happened was members of the state parties, they went to the extent of pointing out there should be a zero use of fossil fuel. Some of them shouted, saying that entire energy that is produced should be free from fossil fuel. And carbon tax that is going to be used should be more. It is not 60% tax you put on their product if it is produced by using fossil fuel. Now the state of India and the state of China joined and opposed tooth and nail. They said it is not possible. For example, from 2016 to 2030, we have made a commitment of $900 billion. And if you ask us for an additional 300 billion, 8,000 crores, 1 billion means, it is just not possible, it is totally unacceptable. Because India is a developing country. There are several countries which are poorer than India. Whether they will be made to, they will see, for example, there are countries with $100 per capita. And $100 per capita income, what they are going to do? India slowly and steadily has crossed $2,000. But then there are still some states, and Africa is the most affected out of it. And in Africa, the use of fossil fuel are mostly used in all the industries. Then I just wanted to tell you, forgot to tell you, in the state of Africa, in the OAU region, and in Africa itself, the state of Africa, South Africa, you find, remember, the pollution of the seas have taken place that far, and it has led to varieties of diseases. This is because of the not controlling, not producing green energy, instead of saying not regulating or controlling the other one, fossil fuel. This is the effect of it. And at that time, our Sadhguru, he had gone to the conference and he had put an idea. Sadhguru, having gone there, he put the idea saying that you have to just go by the river and you just go the sides, both sides of the river. And in both sides of the river, remember, conservation of water has depleted to the maximum. And since conservation of water has depleted to the maximum, there should be plantation by the side of what we call as rivers throughout. He was actually giving a reference to River Kaveri. And he says it takes place, its birth in Bhagamandala in the state, in Kurg district. And then it goes to Kumbakonam, and then it joins the sea near Tanjore. In the entire belt, maybe about 2,000 kilometers, 1,800 kilometers, you should be in a position to plant trees. And when trees are planted during the rainy season, when the water comes in, it will recede. And this water will go downwards and it will conserve the water. And especially nearby people, at least 5-10 kilometers, it will be in a position to supply drinking water. They are called as green credits, and it is being appreciated by everybody. Now, other development is most of it, remember, our energy production is consumed by three sectors. One is the transport sector. Transport sector is the largest consumer of energy. When I speak of transport sector, you think of the buses. Think of the transport that is being carried out by heavy lorries throughout India. Then they think of the power sector. When I speak of the power sector, naturally you require power for everybody. Starting from street light to house light, starting from theater to entertainment. All of them use so much of power and it consumes so much of power. Remember, the use of power is inestimable. Then transport sector and energy sector are the two areas which naturally consume too much of energy. Now, how do you generate? Now, first and foremost, in regard to the transport sector, especially the present Ministry on Transportation have been doing a lot of experiments and spending money for purpose of research. Now, the first thing which I did was they introduced lithium batteries. Lithium batteries are used for purpose of rickshaws and small vehicles, two-wheelers. Now, these two-wheelers are being used some batteries, and you have. Now, one wonderful thing is, remember, as many as 28 to 30% of the world's battery in vehicles are found in India today. Then think of the motor vehicles. When we think of the motor vehicles, remember, 14% of the vehicles today are, remember, either battery or it is gas. And it is not only gas, and it is green gas as well. It is not only methane, and you have green gas also. Now, you may ask me, what is this green gas which is being said? Now, a lot of articles and expressions are being given by the Ministry of Transportation itself. The Minister of Transportation at the central government has made several statements by showing his car only. His car actually uses the hydrogen gas. The gas which is used in his car is hydrogen gas, and the government of India has allocated so much of 1,485 crores for the production of green energy, and then afterwards become self-sufficient and put an end to the use of crude oil. Now, green energy is very, very simple. It is, remember, it has to be separated from water. I am not a science student, because that is why I am not able to explain this. So when, remember, energy is separated, green energy is separated from water through the supply of current. Remember, automatically the entire green energy is being put. And this green energy is being stored. And then it is stored, it is made use of by the vehicle. And for this, remember, you don't require a big, just like putting diesel. Just for if you use about what they say is 10 kilos of green energy, it will require running to about 300 to 350 kilometers. And in a few cases, it may go up to 400 kilometers. Now, America has said our green energy for 1 kilo green energy should be available for $1. If 1 kilo of green energy is available for $1, you think of here, you will be able to produce still in a cheaper rate. Now, it is only because the mechanism science this is being done. And it will be introduced into the cars and is already come. As I said, 14% of the cars in India are now all either battery related or power related or this what we call as gas related green energy that is being related. And the minister is very confident, and he was saying that in another, by the end of next year, remember, 3/4 to or 80% of the petrol will be stopped for purpose of importing. We will stop 80% of petrol from import. That is the steps which is being taken. Now, all of them, when we speak of, remember, are taking a very important step in the right direction, because this is ultimately done only for the survival of man. Mahatma Gandhi has said, you have enough resources, remember, for every human being. But then we don't have any resources for your greed of man. Thank you.